She said she was at work. I followed her and ended up in hell under my own home. My name is Daniel, and I used to think I had a normal life. I'm 36, work in IT, live in the suburbs just outside Portland. Quiet neighborhood. Quiet job. Quiet wife. That was the story I told myself. My wife, Emily, and I have been together for 9 years. No kids. We both agreed early on that parenthood wasn't for us. We wanted freedom, travel, careers. She worked as a nurse night shifts mostly, and I worked from home. We barely saw each other during the week, but I thought that was just marriage. You get used to routine. You get used to distance. Until the night she didn't come home. It was a Wednesday. I remember because I had a deadline and stayed up late coding. Midnight rolled around. No text. No call. I figured her shift had run long. But by 2 a.m. I was pacing. I called the hospital. They said she hadn't shown up for her shift at all. That was the first time something truly didn't make sense. I called her friends. Her sister. Nothing. By 6 a.m. I filed a missing person report. The cops were polite but clearly not panicked. She's an adult, they said. She probably just needed space. But this wasn't like her. Emily was many things called sometimes distracted, but she never disappeared. The following night I couldn't sleep. I walked around the house aimlessly. That's when I noticed something strange. A small draft coming from the hallway floor. We didn't have a basement. Or so I thought. I got down on my knees and felt along the baseboards. One of the boards was loose. Behind it an old key. Not just old antique-looking, brass, with strange little etchings like vines or claws. I had never seen it before in my life. I looked around the house trying to match it with a lock. Nothing. Then I remembered the storage shed at back, which Emily always kept locked and claimed was full of medical junk she didn't want me touching. The key fit perfectly. Inside, it was dark. Dusty. But I could smell something foul. Like rotten metal. I flicked on my phone light and scanned the space. It was just a bunch of crates and shelves until I noticed a square of wood in the floor. A trapdoor. I had lived in that house for 6 years and never noticed it. I opened it. A ladder led down into darkness. The smell got worse. My instinct screamed to stop, but something stronger, curiosity, fear, love, I don't even know, pushed me down the ladder. I descended maybe 15 feet into a space I can only describe as wrong. Stone walls. Wet earth. The sound of dripping water. And then I heard something breathing. Heavy, deliberate, raspy. That's when I saw the first chain. It was bolted into the stone. The thick, rusted iron shackle. And beside it, a woman's shoe. Emily's. Not old. Not dusty. Fresh. My blood ran cold. I froze. For a long moment, I just stared at that shoe. I recognized it immediately, navy blue with a worn sole and a scuff near the toe. I'd seen her wear it last week when she left for her supposed night shift. My brain refused to process what this meant. Why was her shoe down here? Why was there a chain? I should have climbed back up. I should have called the police. But I couldn't. Something primal had kicked in, some mix of dread and obsession. I moved forward. The tunnel wasn't big. I had to crouch. The air was thick with damp, rotting mold, like something had died down there. My phone's flashlight flickered, barely illuminating the rough stone walls. As I moved deeper, the silence got heavier. Except for that breathing sound always ahead of me, just around the next corner. That's when I found the journal. It was half buried under a pile of rags. A leather-bound book, small enough to fit in one hand. The name Emily was written inside the cover in shaky handwriting. The first page was dated 6 months ago. I can't take it anymore. The hunger is getting worse. I thought it would stop after the last one, but it didn't. I have to chain myself down here before I do something I regret again. My mouth went dry. I flipped through the pages. Sketches of people. Horrible, twisted notes. Something about feeding cycles. And always the same sentence scribbled over and over. I'm not human anymore. Suddenly, I heard something move behind me. I spun around and pointed my light toward the sound. There she was. Emily. Or what was left of her. She was hunched over, her back to me, her clothes torn and filthy. Her hair matted. Her skin looked wrong. Pale, almost translucent, with dark veins crawling up her neck. Her limbs were too thin. Her fingers too long. She didn't turn around. I whispered her name. Emily? She twitched. Not startled. More like alerted. Her head tilted slightly like an animal sensing prey. Then, slowly she stood upright. Her bones cracked as she moved. When she finally turned to face me, I saw her eyes. They weren't her eyes. They were black. Fully black, with no whites. And her mouth was smeared with something dark. Her lips had split open from the sides, unnaturally wide, almost to her ears. She smiled. And then she spoke. I told you never to come down here. I backed away slowly, shaking my head. What is this? What's wrong with you? A smile twitched. I tried to protect you. I chained myself. I begged for help, but they don't listen. They are always hungry. They? I whispered. She laughed. A wet, ragged sound that echoed off the stone. Oh, Daniel, you thought I worked night shifts. I was working, feeding them, keeping them full, but I got tired. I stopped bringing people, so now they want me. And then I heard it, dozens of footsteps. Not shoes. Bare feet. Slapping against stone. Coming from deeper in the tunnel. And the breathing multiplied. I turned to run, but my legs were frozen, rooted to the spot. I could feel the darkness closing in, the damp air suffocating me, pressing in from every angle. The sound of those footsteps, creeping was getting louder. They weren't footsteps, they were something worse. Something raw. Emily, or whatever she was now, just stood there, watching me with those grotesque eyes, her mouth still twisted in that eerie too-wide grin. It's too late, she whispered. Her voice was a strange, rasping sound, like a say kissing through the cracks in the earth. They'll come for you too. Before I could react, a figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the tunnel. My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't human. At least not entirely. It was tall at least 7 feet and his skin was in a natural shade of grey, like it had been drained of all colour. But it wasn't the skin that made me stumble back in fear. It was the eyes. They were black. Completely black, like holes in the universe, sucking everything around them into oblivion. I was paralysed. I couldn't look away from its gaze. You're too close, the creature rasped, its voice deep and guttural, like it had been buried alive for centuries. It stepped forward, its long limbs bending at odd angles, the bones in its body popping as it moved closer. Emily's laughter echoed behind me, her voice growing more frantic. They're going to take you, just like they took me, just like they took all of them. I couldn't breathe. Every instinct screamed for me to run, but my body refused to cooperate. I felt trapped, the walls of the tunnel closing in. The creature raised a long, bony hand toward me, its fingers ending in sharp, jagged claws. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Just as the creature's fingers brushed my shoulder, a flash of light exploded in the tunnel. I jerked back, disoriented, and saw another figure step forward. This one was human, or at least it appeared to be. He was dressed in a dark, long coat and carried a strange, glowing device in his hand. His face was shadowed by the brim of his hat, but I could see his eyes familiar, piercing, sharp. Get back, he said coldly, and before I could respond, he swung the device toward the creature. The air crackled with energy, and the creature howled in pain. It recoiled, but it didn't run. Instead, its face contorted, and the black eyes narrowed. You shouldn't be here, the man said, his voice low, almost warning. None of you should be. I looked at him, still in shock. Who are you? I choked out. I'm someone who's been hunting them for years, he replied without hesitation. But I didn't expect to find one so close to home. Hunting them? I repeated, my mind barely able to keep up. What are they? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at Emily, who was still standing there, her twisted form barely human, her body trembling with some sort of hungry anticipation. A hybrid, the man said finally, his gaze never leaving her. A mistake, and you're too late to fix it. I took a shaky step back. You know her. She was once human, he said, his voice laced with regret. But they got to her before she could be saved. I could feel the tension building. Whatever this was, whatever they were, it was worse than I had imagined. There was something ancient, something monstrous lurking beneath the surface of the world, and I was in the middle of it. And I had no idea how to get out. I stood frozen, my mind reeling. The man's words echoed in my head, but they made no sense. A hybrid? A mistake? What the hell was going on here? Emily, my wife, hadn't just disappeared. She'd been changed. She wasn't the woman I loved anymore. The creature, it wasn't human. Its eyes locked onto the glowing device the man held, its black pupils narrowing, as if it recognized the threat. I could see its lips peeling back, revealing sharp teeth like a predatory animal. It hissed, a sound that grated on my nerves, making my skin crawl. The man raised the device higher, pointing it directly at the creature, but Emily moved before he could do anything. She flung herself forward, her fingers extended like claws, and in a blur of motion, she swiped at the man's chest. He staggered back with a grunt of pain, but somehow he held his ground. You'll regret this, he said, his voice now tinged with frustration, as if he was speaking from experience. Emily didn't respond. She was no longer the woman I knew. She was something else. Something darker. She lunged at him again, but the man quickly activated the device with a sharp twist of his wrist. There was a burst of light, brilliant and blinding. For a split second, I thought it was the end of everything. I was sure I would never see daylight again. But then the light faded, and the creature was gone. Emily, however, was still there. She stood in the center of the tunnel, her breathing ragged, her body jerking as if she were struggling to hold herself together. It was like the blast hadn't done anything to her. She was just waiting. The man breathed heavily, his gaze fixed on Emily. He was wounded, blood seeping through the coat. But he didn't seem to care. He was focused on her. I told you they'd come for you, Emily whispered, her voice a hoarse rasp. She grinned again, that awful, unnatural grin. You can't stop them. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I couldn't move. I didn't even know what was happening. All I knew was that my wife, my Emily, was not the same person anymore. And the more I looked at her, the less I recognized her. The man stepped forward slowly, keeping his weapon pointed at her. We don't have much time, he said, his voice tight. They're closing in. We have to leave now. What do you mean I said, my voice cracking. What the hell is going on here? What have you done to her? The man's eyes flickered to me for the briefest moment. I didn't do this, they did, but she was my responsibility. His words held a strange, bitter finality. I've been hunting these creatures for years. It's my job to stop them before they spread. What? I asked, still barely understanding what was happening. Are you telling me that she's one of them now? That I've been living with a monster? He nodded, his expression grim. She was infected by something older than you can imagine, and now she's carrying it. They're going to want more. They'll keep coming until they have it all, and you, Daniel, you're in the way. I felt like I was drowning in confusion. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about Emily, was slipping through my fingers. She wasn't just my wife anymore. She was something else, something dangerous. And I was part of whatever nightmare this was. I looked at her one last time, her foam hunch, her eyes still black as night, her smile stretching impossibly wide. And then, before I could react, she lunged at me. Time seemed to slow down as Emily's figure blurred towards me. I could see the hunger in her eyes. No, it wasn't just hunger. It was something worse. Something primal, twisted. As her body lunged at me, I instinctively stepped back, but there was nowhere to run. The tunnel was too narrow. The walls were too close. Her hand shot out, grasping for my throat. I barely dodged in time, the tips of her fingers grazing my skin, sending a shiver of cold through my entire body. I could smell the rot in her breath, the stench of decay, like she hadn't eaten in weeks. Stop! I yelled, my voice trembling. Emily, please. But there was no recognition in her eyes, no trace of the woman I once knew. She was gone. With a snarl, she attacked again, her teeth snapping dangerously close to my face. The man was behind me now, pushing me forward, his face set in grim determination. Get moving, he barked. I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted past Emily, shoving her aside as she tried to grab my leg. The man was right behind me, practically dragging me down the narrow tunnel as I stumbled in panic. I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know what to do. My mind was still reeling from the shock of it all. What is this? I gasped, trying to catch my breath as we ran. What happened to her? What are they? The man didn't answer immediately. He kept his pace steady, his eyes scanning the darkness around us. Finally, he spoke in a low, urgent tone, his voice strained. She's part of a much bigger problem, Daniel. There's a whole network of these creatures. They've been hiding in plain sight for centuries, infecting people, turning them into this. He glanced at me briefly, his expression hardening. They're not human anymore, they're monsters. But they still look human, they blend in, they've infiltrated societies, families, businesses, and governments. They're everywhere. My stomach twisted as the gravity of his words hit me. Everywhere. The thought was suffocating. I'd been living with one of them, loving one of them. And I had no idea. Why didn't you stop it sooner? I managed to choke out. Why didn't you save her? The man's jaw tightened. I tried, believe me, I tried, but these things, these hybrids, they are not easy to kill. They are ancient, they are strong, and they're relentless. He shook his head. There's nothing left of her. Daniel, she's lost. I wanted to scream, to hit him. I didn't want to hear this. I didn't want to believe it. Emily couldn't be gone. She couldn't be lost forever. She was my wife. My Emily. But then the tunnel behind us echoed with more sounds. The unmistakable thuds of footsteps. Not just one. Not just two. There were more. The creatures were coming. And they were getting closer. Keep moving, the man shouted, urgency in his voice. We have to get out of here. We have to leave now. We ran faster, our footsteps echoing off the cold stone walls. I could hear Emily's voice behind me, distorted and raspy, calling my name. Daniel, she crooned, her voice sweet and familiar, but also twisted. Come back to me. I can still feel you, Daniel. Come home. I tried to block it out. I couldn't look back. I couldn't. But my heart ached. I knew her voice. It was her. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could resist. Ahead of us, the tunnel stretched on endlessly, but I could feel the walls closing in. I could feel the weight of everything, the terror, the loss, the realization that my life had been a lie pressing down on me. I had no idea how long we ran. All I knew was that something was chasing us. Something much worse than Emily. And there was nowhere to hide. Suddenly, the man stopped. His hand shot out, grabbing my arm and pulling me to a halt. I looked at him, confused, but he was staring ahead, his face pale. "There's no way out," he muttered. I felt my pulse quicken. What? What was he talking about? "What do you mean, no way out?" I demanded, panic rising in my chest. "What the hell is going on?" But before he could answer, a scream echoed through the tunnel. And this time, it wasn't just Emily. It was something far worse. And it was coming for us. The scream shattered the silence, sending a wave of dread down my spine. It wasn't human. It was guttural, a mix of pain and hunger, echoing through the narrow tunnel like a primal cry for blood. And then, everything went cold. The air thickened, and I could feel them closing in. The man didn't move at first, his face frozen in terror. He was staring at something just ahead, where the tunnel curved out of view. I followed his gaze, my heart pounding in my chest. There, in the dark, something was moving, slithering, dragging itself toward us, scraping its claws against the stone floor. It was tall, but hunched, with limbs too long for its body. Its skin shimmered, slick and grey like it was covered in oil, and those black, soulless eyes gleamed in the darkness. It was one of them, one of the monsters. "Get out of here." Now, the man shouted, his voice breaking through my fog of fear. He grabbed my arm and pulled me forward. "Run, Garth!" I didn't need to be told again. I turned and sprinted, the weight of my own legs slowing me down as if the very air around me was turning to concrete. But as I ran, I heard the shuffle of something behind me, something more than just one creature. There were others, dozens of them, moving in the shadows. They were all around us. "Where do we go?" I gasped, stumbling over a loose stone, nearly falling to the ground. The man was already pulling ahead, but his face was pale, his steps quicker now. "The surface," he said breathlessly, his eyes flicking around wildly. "We have to reach the surface, that's our only chance." But that was when the tunnel began to change. The walls, once rough and cold, now seemed to pulse with a sickly light, the very earth beneath our feet seeming to shift and move. It was like the tunnel itself was alive, closing in on us, trapping us in its grip. I could feel it, something ancient, something evil, pressing down on me. "I can't." I started to protest, but before I could finish, a loud crash echoed from behind. I turned, and there she was. Emily. She was standing in the middle of the tunnel, her eyes wide and black, her arms raised, her body trembling. Her skin had taken on a sickly greenish tint, her fingers elongated and claw-like. But what terrified me most wasn't her appearance. It was the look on her face. It was as if she had made a decision, one that would destroy everything. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice soft, almost pleading. "Please come back. You don't know what you're running from. They can't be stopped. They're already one of us. You just don't know it yet." I stopped dead in my tracks, a chill running through me as the words sank in. One of us. What did she mean? I wanted to ask, to scream, but before I could make sense of it, the man next to me pulled me forward again. "Don't listen to her," he shouted. "She's not Emily anymore." I wanted to argue, to tell him that she was still in there, somewhere. But deep down, I knew it wasn't true. She had already been lost. And then, the ground beneath us shook. The walls trembled. A deep, rumbling sound echoed from above, growing louder, shaking the very foundation of the tunnel. The creatures were coming, all of them. I looked back one last time, but it was too late. Emily's figure was already swallowed by the darkness, and from the shadows more of them emerged, hundreds, if not more. The creatures, with their black eyes and grotesque forms, flooded the tunnel, surrounding us. They moved with unnatural speed, their movements jerky, alien, and terrifying. The man grabbed my arm again. "Run," she yelled. "They are all coming for you." I could feel the heat of their breath on my neck, the scrape of claws against the stone. There was no way out. And then, just as I thought it was over, just as I felt the darkness closing in, I heard it. A voice. Not Emily's. Not the man's. A voice from above, distant but clear. "He's not alone." I didn't know who said it. I didn't know what it meant. But in that moment, I realized something chilling. The nightmare wasn't just beneath the earth. It was everywhere. And the world was about to change forever. Ask ChatGPT. There were more of them.